So I'm going to start by giving you a little introduction to the Out and About project. It's a 2-year project funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and it builds on previous work that Jana and Natalie have done with RAMM over the past couple of years, which was particularly focused on working with young LGBTQ+ people. The funding from the National Lottery Heritage Fund has meant that we can build on this brilliant foundation to create a much wider project involving more people and making a real impact. I'll put a link in the chat box in just a moment to the project website where you can find out all about what we've been up to. When you visit the website, you'll see there's loads of different elements to the project, including artist commissions, working with our research volunteers, working with young people, events, making a new interactive for one of RAMM's spaces, brilliant work from our writer in residence, a blog, lots of people working with us to queer objects from RAMM's collections, and a queer collector's case. Our main ambition for the project is to ensure that LGBTQ+ people feel welcomed and well represented at RAMM. Until recently, museums haven't actively created space for queer, trans and non-binary people. LGBTQ+ voices are often missing and unheard in interpretation materials, viewpoints and selections of objects. So through this project, we want to address this imbalance to instead express and celebrate LGBTQ+ heritage. The project's really part of a wider national and international movement, with many other museums and heritage sites also beginning to share LGBTQ+ heritage and history. We're so excited to be collaborating with Exeter Pride this year as part of their virtual Pride celebrations. It's such a shame that COVID has meant that we're not able to meet up in person, but today promises to be a really exciting and varied programme. And I'm sure we'll hear lots more about what the Exeter Pride team have got in store for us later on in the event. So I'm going to hand over to Jana now to speak a little bit about the university's involvement in the project.
Yeah, I'm just going to be very brief. We have another event this afternoon where I'm going to say much more about the project and the research we're doing. But just to introduce myself quickly, so I'm one of the directors of the Queering the Museum project, but I also work at the university. And at the university, I'm one of the co-chairs of our LGBTQ+ staff network, which is there for academics, professional services, really everyone who works at the university. And we also work very closely with the LGBTQ+ student network. So really connecting queer, trans, and binary people across the university. And I think one thing everyone on our networks at the university is really excited about is collaborating more with people beyond the university. So this is why working with RAMM is hugely exciting to us, working with Exeter Pride. We also work with the Intercom Trust as one of our key project partners, Exeter City of Literature, and many others. And so I really hope that this project, in a sense, allows us to do a lot of exciting work with RAMM, but also can be a springboard to connect with other communities, organizations, institutions, and networks really across Exeter, Devon, and the Southwest, so that we can really build capacity and collaborate and work together and share resources and kind of just be a community that supports each other in different ways. And so that's why I'm really, really excited to be here and to have the events across the afternoon.
Thanks, Jana. So I'm Nat McGrath, I'm one of the co-directors for Out and About, Queering the Museum at RAMM, and part of the work I'm doing has been to look at ways to engage with the collections and to invite artists to make responses to them. So I have a kind of cultural heritage producer role on the project, and just as for us to find and different ways to open up conversations about the objects in the museum. And the other part of my role, which is really going to kind of start to really kick in, and I'll talk more about this in the 3:30 session, but is as writer in residence. It's been an interesting task with the museum shut for the majority. I think, is it right that the museum was open for 31 days in the last kind of 14 months? Yeah, so obviously, so COVID has been a challenge to that, but it's really, Jana and I last week were able to get into the storage facility, so it's really starting to kind of take shape, this kind of creative response that I'm making to the museum and the work that really important for us to be able to be inclusive as a project in terms of the other organisations in the city that are looking there is visibility or opportunities for LGBTQIA people, and Exeter Pride is one of them. And so I just want to firstly welcome Simon Bowkett and Kate Farrell, who are co-chairs of Exeter Pride. If you could just give us a wave, Simon and Kate, thank you. And also to welcome Sharifa Hashemy, who is the head of and so welcome Sharifa as well. It's just really, and you have a great connection to the project. You've been working with us behind the scenes, supporting us, and also we'll talk more about something else that you're involved in towards the end of this. People would join us at our next event, and there is a connection to your work, Sharifa, with Exeter Pride as well. So it felt like a really lovely way to sort of kick off this afternoon, to have the three of you. So thank you for joining us. To learn more about the work that the three of you do, because it's very important that that there's visibility in terms of the what you do, and also we really want to think about what pride means in the second year in March, and have a gathering and a celebration in the city of Exeter. And also just to say that we're also going to take some time and to think about the NHS workers who have been so amazing and supported so many people during this time. It shared a want to honour the workers of the NHS this year, and so we will spend a moment being mindful and doing that. So Sharifa, if you're happy to tell us more about your role and the work that you do and how it then connects to Exeter Pride, and then we'll talk to Simon and Kate about the work that they do for Exeter Pride.
Sure. So thank you very much for having me. It's really exciting to be here. And, you know, like everyone said, it's a little bit sad that we're not able to gather in person. I think, you know, it's an event that I certainly look forward to each year. And so it's nice to be able to kind of mark it in this way. In terms of what I do, so I'm head of equality, diversity and inclusion at South Western Ambulance Service. We cover all of the Southwest region, so from Cornwall through to Devon, Dorset, Somerset, up towards Gloucester, so it's quite a big area. That means we have quite a large number of staff, so about 5,000 members of staff, and because we cover such a large area, we cover about at least 7 if not 8 prides throughout the year across that region. And it's always been really important for us to be there, to be present. There's something for me that's really important about visibility. So do we see someone that looks like us, that makes us connect to that network? But also there is a real serious aspect in terms of patient care. So if we aren't learning from our patients who, you know, are LGBT, who have their particular needs and how we respond to them as a service, then we're not responding well and we're not safe. So that's really, really important thing for us. So it's partly about being visible, but also partly about connecting with the community to say, you know, tell us what we're doing well, but also tell us what we're not doing well. And on a personal level, you know, I'm gay, and it's a really, really important part of who I am to be able to come together, to be visible, to see my friends. It's the one time of the year where walking down the street and holding my fiance's hand isn't going to raise any eyebrows, because others around me know that that's okay and you feel safe within that. So that's, you know, that's kind of pride and what it means to me. And Exeter was probably my first safe pride, I would say, because I grew up sort of in a quite a traditional religious Muslim household, so being gay was not an okay thing for a long time for me. But having moved to Exeter from London, which should have been safer but didn't, because everyone I knew lived there, it was the first time I was able to join Pride and just be me and be safe and feel comfortable in coming out and being visible. So really important part of, you know, who I am, really.
Thank you, Sharifa. That's fantastic to hear. And I think, you know, that there is something really about the community aspect of Pride in Exeter, and I don't know whether it's to do with the size of the city of Exeter, and it just allows for that kind of holding space, doesn't it, in a way, for it as a celebration and a marking of so many other things that are important. Now, Kate, I wonder if you could just tell us something about your role as co-chair of Exeter Pride, and then I'll ask Simon as well, just because I think it's really important, and just to put into context that everyone who is a trustee of Exeter Pride is a volunteer, and so you give your time to make this incredible event happen. And I think, you know, those are the things that by the wider public. So I just think it's important for me to mark that, and to thank you both for that work that you do.
Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. Hi, I'm Kate, and I'm co-chair of Exeter Pride. I'm a little fledgling co-chair, although what, about 8 months into it now, with no pride to show, unfortunately, yet. Okay, so these times have made it an interesting but still really engaging, but slightly disconnected experience. I've met two of my co-chairs in person from a safe distance at one of the pauses that we had towards the end of last year. But my relationships with this incredible board of trustees that we have are surrounded by the frame of a Zoom or a Teams meeting. And yet, through that, I feel a real closeness, a connection, and an admiration for what they've achieved in the past, the passion that they want to bring to this year, and the disappointment that I shared that because of COVID, we weren't able to do a large in-person event, that we are hoping to get together at the end of the summer, all things going well, and I'm touching every bit of wood that I have around me. To reflect, recognize, and celebrate together. Being a Pride trustee for me, and why I joined and threw myself head first in at the head. So I'm living in Exeter for 3 years now, but prior to COVID, my role saw me travel 100% of the time. So I was home maybe for a Friday night and a Saturday if I was lucky each week, and it would change week on, week off, depending on where I was traveling. And I was without community, without roots, distanced from my friends, my previous LGBTQ plus community that I had around me, some in London, more in Ireland, where I moved from in 2014, and I felt disconnected even though I had a home. So I had a family and very deep roots there, but felt quite bereft as I looked around. Had never managed to be in Exeter when Exeter Pride was happening, which was just extraordinary for me. Managed to visit a couple of the other ones around the country to still keep in, but never managed. And I thought one thing that COVID gave me was an opportunity to be present, be home, put down those roots, even in this virtual time. And that was the other gift that at the time it gave me, was time. And so I said, I want to commit that time to something that means so much to me. I was very lucky to meet such a great bunch of people. And I think we're going to do incredible things. I can't wait for next year, for when we get to truly plan another fantastic physical Pride event like the ones that have taken place before. It makes me incredibly excited to think about rolling up my sleeves and getting on the street, because as Sharifa pointed out, that visibility is the it's one of the most important parts of it. Having that safe space where even for just one day, you can take a breath and just be you. Right. And you don't have to make an effort and don't have to try anything. You can just exist in a safe space and be happy. It's hugely important. So I'm very honored to work with Simon and the rest of the trustees, trying to put together and build what will be some virtual and connecting events over the course of this year. So we maintain that visibility and then really gearing up as we come into 2022 for a return. Yeah, so that's me.
Thanks so much, Kate. I won't say too much in between kind of the responses, but there are connecting threads already that we're kind of feeling, I think. Simon, can you tell us about your role and the work you do and about Exeter Pride?
Sure. So yeah, hi everyone. My name's Simon. I'm co-chair with Kate this year of Exeter Pride. I've been involved with Exeter Pride probably about 7 or 8 years now, I think, as a sort of volunteer on the committee, and was elected as chair in 2019. For 2020 and 2021, we tend to serve a 2-year term. And so at least Kate's got next year to deliver a physical Pride, whereas I think I'll be the first Exeter Pride chair in history to serve 2 years and spectacularly fail to deliver a Pride, which is a little bit embarrassing. Having said that, I felt a lot better when Brighton cancelled, because it looked like they were all going to go ahead in August, and then even they had to decide it really wasn't safe to do so. And I suppose in that 7 or 8 years that I've been involved, I've really seen Pride come on. It's always felt very community rooted. We pride ourselves in being one of the largest prides in the country that is still completely free to access. There's no, kind of ticketing or wristbanding or whatever to participate in the main march or in the festival site. So I think that sense of keeping it for the community, owned and run by the community, has always been really important. And then a few years back, when it was the 10th Exeter Pride, we pulled off a bit of a coup by having Joss Stone headlining. Obviously lives locally and really wanted to give something back to the community. And I think she recognised that she had quite a big LGBT following and kind of wanted to thank her hometown and her fans. And that year we suddenly saw the attendance go from sort of 6,000 to 7,000 up to sort of 15,000. And really pleased that ever since that point, it's kind of stayed at the same level. That's fantastic. It also comes with challenges, because I think there have been times when the Pride Village has felt a little bit touristy, if that's the right word. And certainly, in fact, the year that Joss Stone performed, I was responsible for events that year, and I spent most of the Sunday responding to complaints about, a drag queen had sworn on stage, or had made some sexual reference or something, and I was having to write to people to kind of gently say, you're welcome to come as a straight family with your kids and everything else, but for one day a year, this is kind of our space, and if you engage, you kind of engage on our terms. So I feel a little bit ambivalent about the whole numbers thing, and the kind of quest to feel like it's always got to be bigger and bigger and bigger, because I don't think that's what Pride is about, actually. And I guess I had a bit of a reminding myself of what Pride is about in 2019, when I was very fortunate. I turned 50 that year, and of course it was also the 50th anniversary of Stonewall, and my partner and I kind of went on a bit of a secular pilgrimage to New York. And New York Pride, it was World Pride that year, was everything you would expect it to be. It was incredibly showy and impressive and amazing. But the morning of Pride, there was also a queer liberation march, which was just no corporates, no floats, no police, just a demonstration, just a pure march of queer people through the streets of New York, and highly, highly, highly political, right back to the political roots, not only of LGBT issues, but I remember at the time, the whole immigration system and ICE and the way it was behaving was a massive feature. So you were just as likely to see placards about Trump's immigration policies as you were about kind of queer rights. And I think that really took me back to the community roots of solidarity that I think Pride is all about. In terms of Exeter Pride, I was just trying to think about kind of key moments, and it's great for us to be able to link up with Queer in the Museum, because I've got a big interest in queer history myself. But One of them was, we had a panel debate, and what was then the new Earl of Devon was there, which kind of freaked me out a little bit. I had a bit of a chat with him afterwards, and he was telling me about, he was trying to sort of make amends for the fact that his father, when civil partnerships had come in, said over his dead body, could civil partnerships take place at Powderham? So he was trying to put things right from that point of view, but they had also discovered that in the family history, there had been a guy who should have been the heir to become the Earl of Devon, who was declared insane because he was gay, and has been kind of airbrushed out of the sort of family history. And he's on a bit of a mission to kind of research that and kind of restore this personality to the history of Powderham, which I thought was really, really powerful. So that really kind of struck me, you know, kind of reminded me how far we've come. I think sometimes we can be, you know, think of ourselves in the Southwest as being quite, you know, staid and traditional and, you know, maybe a little backward looking. But I think that was a real sign of how far we've come. But then the flip side of that, it was the last Pride we did, actually, it was in 2019. And there was a father who was there with his teenage daughter to support her. And they had come down from Tiverton, and he was saying how much he, you know, felt really, really good coming down to Exeter on Pride Day and seeing all these kind of queer kids, you know, putting on their makeup and the glitter and just sort of getting themselves all ready. And then he said, but then it's equally sad on the train home when they're covering it up, doing their coats up, because kind of Tiverton on a Saturday night still isn't a safe place to be kind of out and queer. So that really got us thinking at Exeter Pride about making sure we're not too smug and complacent about Exeter's kind of liberal metropolitan outlook, and that we don't forget that there are, you know, there's a rural hinterland where it's still not easy to be queer even in this day and age. So I think we've got a bit of a mission to try and take seriously our responsibility to some of the more rural communities as well. So I'll leave it there for now.
Thanks, Simon. I mean, there's so much to think about in terms of the political roots of Pride and the challenges and the rural hinterlands that you bring up as well, and of how knowing and often sometimes cities can be safe yet unsafe spaces, but that there's a maybe more to readily access. And I think one of the things that, you know, we're really trying to reach into at RAMM with Out and About is to think about not just the collections, but also the architecture of the building and the how there is a welcoming. You know, we're talking with the RAMM shop as well, who want to put in of queer, trans and non-binary literature, just to make sure that there is an engagement there. So RAMM are kind of looking at it in different kinds of levels across the board with the, you know, as an institution, in terms of that invitation, that, you know, that invite. And it struck me also when you talked about, sorry, I said I wasn't going to say much in between, but I just think that just to kind of bring all the three things, the three responses that we've had, that idea that Exeter Pride is still one of the only free prides is a really interesting and perhaps unknown fact for people in terms of knowing. And so it does really, I've always perceived it as an event that really does try to serve its community and its wider community. And just Sharifa, you know, to just touch upon one of my lasting memories always of Pride is you with your team and an ambulance and there at the parade. And I just wondered, you know, if you could just talk about the feeling, what that conjures for you.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, I just wanted to touch a little bit about what Simon said around, there were two things that really struck me, was around sort of the origins of where Pride came on, and that actually it's a protest. And I think every year I have conversations all over the place around, you know, why isn't there a straight Pride? And my response is, you don't need one, every day is one, actually. And, you know, this Pride isn't just a celebration, it's a revolution. It's recognizing the need, it's recognizing where we've come from, but also around the world and how that feels for different people. Because I think it's really important to recognise that, yes, it might be safe for us here in Exeter, and yes, there are areas that aren't safe around us, but actually there are people in the world who are queer who, you know, who will lose their life if they come out. And that's a really important part of what Pride is. And sort of, yeah, so why is it important for us to be there, and actually how fun it is to be there for the day? And that's a big part of it for me. It's around how do we bring a community within our service, so that ambulance service isn't as diverse as it could be. It's something that we need to work on more. So if we look at our sort of the NHS in general and we compare it to the ambulance services, the wider NHS is more diverse and representative of the community it serves. And actually that's something that we need to work towards, and towards kind of representing the people around us, and just being there for the day and being able to bring people from all walks of the ambulance service, whether they're call takers, paramedics, you know, people in support services, and being able to say we are one, we're a team, and this is what we believe in, and this is what we support, and this is our community. It always feels to me, but I'm very political, so it always feels to me like a political act. And I think there is something about the intersections of who I am, which means that I look at it from that lens. So, you know, I'm a Muslim person, I'm Arab, I'm female, I'm gay, I have a disability. All of those intersect and sort of become who we are. And when we come to Pride, we come as all we are as a person. And it's really important for me to touch on that point, because actually those parts mean that there is more barriers for different people that are there. And I think it's not really been until the last few years that I've been able to marry up me being someone who's born Muslim and Arab with my gay identity quite so clearly. And in fact, I only came out to my mum after I got engaged, actually. And so that was quite recent, in the last few months. And the expectation was that she would say, absolutely don't want anything to do with this. And she did to begin with. But you know, she met Jess a few weeks ago, and that went really well. So it's those bits that are really important about us being there. It's not just kind of what people imagine. And I think there's something about the imagery, and this is why visibility is so important to me. So when I look at imagery of people who are within the LGBT community, the images that I see don't always represent the person who I am, and so that can be quite disconnecting. And similarly, if I think of the ambulance service, if we think about the imagery, it doesn't always look like someone like me. So being able to connect those intersections into all parts of our lives allow us to be freer, but it also allows us to tell other people that might identify and look like me, to say, do you know what, there is a community for me there. It's safe for me to be who I am. It's safe for me to reach out. And we know that mental health is a really big issue, both within ambulance services and within the LGBT community. So again, it's that kind of thing of going, okay, so how do we bring this community together? How do we make it visible? How do we make it safe? How do we recognize the intersections that people are going through and be able to support them and allow them a safe space to speak up? So I hope that's a little bit about kind of why it's important for me personally to be there as well.
Thanks, Sharifa. I think, you know, connecting and trying to reach and bring community together across its intersections, individuals and their intersections, and I mean, it's just really important to hear that. So thank you. And I think it's something that we can work together on, I believe, you know, and as these partnerships and develop, and that we're able to all listen and hear of the needs and what Pride could be, and to also never forget, as Simon's just put in the chat in response to you speaking, Sharifa, about there are 71 countries I'm just put that still outlaw same-sex relationships, and 11 with the death penalty. They're quite shocking figures as well. So there's so much to kind of navigate, and when you're thinking about how you bring what you can bring to Pride, and what Pride is thinking about what Pride can bring to the city, it's quite a complex ask, isn't it? So in terms of trying to think about how it sits within a city, but how it sits for the people that it is for. Simon talked about those challenges earlier. I think that was a really important point as well. I don't know if anybody would like to add anything to what Sharifa's just said, or like to come in and ask a question. Anyone from the other panelists or from the QTM team, if you have any questions or anything that you would like to ask.
I have a question, if that's okay. I mean, I think it follows on from what quite a lot of people have been saying. Simon, you talked about this idea of people complaining, and I think if it's like cis-het people complaining, it's absolutely right to say this is not your day or this is not your space, and to kind of like gently push away those criticisms. But of course, there's also a lot of debate from within our community of what Pride should be and what it means for Pride to be capacious and inclusive. I mean, recently all this stuff about kink and how visible kink should be at Pride and what that means. So I was wondering how you're navigating those really, really difficult issues. I mean, something we're also thinking about on our project on the LGBTQ+ staff network. It's really difficult within the community to make it inclusive. So any thoughts you have on how you are addressing those issues or concerns?
Yeah, sure. I'll answer it personally if that's okay, Jana, just in terms of my take, because obviously any decisions around policy or particularly anything sort of contentious would go through our committee as a group of trustees. I think, I mean, as well as the kind of divide between the queer community and the, you know, sort of cis heterosexual community, I think we also have to recognise there are tribes under the umbrella as well, as you've said, and there is discussion and debate there. I think we also have to recognise there's privilege there as well. I mean, one of the reasons I was really thrilled that Kate joined as co-chair this year is because up to this point, every chair of Exeter Pride has always identified as a cis male, and you know that's not sustainable. It's not representative of our community. And I was having a bit of a debate with a certain local MP who is gay, and we were talking about the loss of queer spaces, and especially, you know, in London, they reckon sort of 2/3 of what were gay pubs, clubs, and so on have now closed. And the argument was put to me that, well, we don't really need them anymore because, you know, I can go for a meal with my partner, you know, anywhere in Exeter, nobody stares, you know, and my pushback was kind of, but you have privilege, you know, you're powerful, you're wealthy, you're educated, you're a nice gay. And I think there is, when it comes down to what is and isn't appropriate at Pride, I would hope that we are always at the edge, because I think there is a sanitized form of gay that is acceptable. You know, if you're kind of professional, married, mortgaged with a small dog called Liberace or something, then the neighbours all think you're great and you become their sort of adopted pet gay. If you're into the kind of leather scene and fisting and God knows what else, then suddenly people have got a problem when you want to start talking about that. So there has been debate within the Pride community about things like, is it okay to wear fetish wear at Pride, for instance, or is that too, you know, exhibitionist, whatever. And I kind of feel there has to be space within Pride for expressions of, well, of sexuality, and you can't have sexuality without talking about sex. And so, you know, so for me, I think that stuff's important, and I also think, and there is a degree of bi privilege that I have, because, you know, when my partner who is female, my current partner, when we're out, people just read us as, you know, straight couple. But even same-sex couples, where there is that level of acceptance, that isn't necessarily true of non-binary people. It's certainly not true of trans people at the moment, who I think are facing some of the most vitriolic attacks and abuse and complete indifference from government. So I think it comes back to Sharifa's point about recognising the different identities within our community, the intersectionality. And if I can't stand with, you know, my trans siblings, then what is the point of this thing? How can we claim to be a community or a movement if actually I'm only interested in the B and the, you know, that sort of very narrow bit. So yeah, I mean, I think for me the debates are very real. I don't think Pride should shy away from them, and I think if we were truly getting back to the original values of the Pride movement, we would be reminding people that it's a very broad rainbow, it's a very broad spectrum. And you know, Marsha P. Johnson, you know, famously said, until everyone has their gay rights, nobody has their gay rights. And I think that's a really important value to hold on to. Kate, do you want to add anything to that?
I do. I'm struck by a lot of what you said, and it resonates. So in my so I guess Exeter Pride is my other gay job, and I've got my day job. So my other gay job is I'm a founding member of our LGBTQ plus CRG in the company that I work for. It's a multinational animal healthcare company, 10,000 employees, 60 different countries. But up until last year, zero LGBTQ representation or presence, just nothing. And so stark in its absence. It's an American company and very, very conservative. So through a new CEO, there's been a change in DE&I. And so we've been able and had a bit of corporate support to say, okay, well, we're going to start and have our voices heard. We've got members in 14 countries now. And we had a breakthrough this month where we got agreement from the board of the company to fly the Pride flag in any of the sites that we own. Absolutely fantastic win. But oh wait, it has to be the traditional Pride flag. We can't fly the Progress Pride flag. And we said, but why? Why would we not want to recognize, particularly in the US and after the year that we've had, the incredible contribution, right, of Black and brown people and our trans brothers and sisters? And they said, oh no, it's too divisive. But it's not, it's inclusive. And if this is a D&I journey, then we want to be inclusive. So eventually we took the win of getting the Pride flag, but it's left a seething undercurrent of resentment through our membership, which I fully understand, because it goes against the ideal of or the vision of Pride, which is inclusion, which is about representation. To Sharifa's point earlier, it's about seeing people who look and feel like me, so I know that I've got a space. So Simon, what you were saying there about different parts of the community, and even community is such a misnomer, because we are an umbrella or a tapestry of so many different groups, and just looking after the ones that are more vanilla now, right? And I look, you know, again, taking my organization as an example, this year as we ramp up, we are having more visibility for Pride, but it is Chad and Ed and their two kids, right? And everything through a lens of actual cisgendered stereotypes, right? And heteronormative stereotypes just applied to gay people, right? And that's not true representation. So I think personal view, again, it's fundamental that we have spaces for representatives for everybody in our community, even if that frankly means a puppy play park over in the corner, right? So.
Thank you. That was really, really helpful and really interesting to hear your perspectives. I don't know, Sharifa, if you have anything to add. I mean, no problem if not, but it seems like loads of that also resonated with points you made earlier.
Just to say that I absolutely agree. I think, you know, absolutely people want to see a sanitized, whatever cis normative version of Pride looks like. And, you know, I realize also that there is a privilege that I've got. I'm femilican, you know, when I walk into work or when I walk into a space, unless I say who I am and that I identify as being queer, then I don't face that. And actually it's really important to recognize all of those different intersections and how they come about. And, you know, also to Kate's point about what organizations kind of might feel like versus what people might feel like. And there's an absolute difference everywhere. I think socially people tend to move a lot quicker in a community, and they recognize where that comes from. But if we look at organizations and who has the power within different organizations and where they started, well, actually, there you go. There's your kind of dissonance right there, because the people who have been there the longest or have the most power tend to be people who are white, straight, male, you know, cisgendered, and they've not been through that journey. And to me, it's really important to be connected to that community, to be connected to the person out there, and to be connected to younger people, because I'm recognizing now, I'm 37, I'm getting to a point where actually I don't know how younger people are feeling. And unless we are within the community and talking about all of those different changes and what they mean to people, as well as connecting to our history, then we tend to lose that kind of the sense of where we need to be going, but also where we've come from and how it's all connected.
Thank you, three of you. So there was a pause there because I was just writing some of the things down and taking notes as all three of you have been sharing your thoughts and speaking. And I just wondered if there's anything that Kate, Simon, and Sharifa, that you haven't had a chance to say, that you think, I wish I'd shared that, or I wish I'd said that, in relationship to us thinking about the real value and real importance and the work that Pride does, and the kind of the ripple effect of the work that it does. It would be great to hear from you now, as time is quickly moving on. So if there's anything you've not said that you think I'd really would like to say that as well.
I suppose for me, it was how we take people on a journey with us. So when I joined the ambulance service 6 years ago now, my first Pride that I went to as part of the service was, a small handful of people who identified as being queer and wanted to be there to be visible and celebrate with their friends. And actually now we are in this journey where we're inviting our executives and our board to come along who aren't queer. And to them, it's like, well, this is a different world, because actually, unless you're queer or within a community, or a community of people who identify as being queer, then understanding the culture and what it means can be different and difficult. And so being able to take them and kind of go, this is what Pride is, this is why it's important, this is how it feels to be here, has had a huge impact on how our organisations looks at queer people, but also how it looks at different intersectionality. So I'm able to go and kind of go, actually, I face that problem because I'm gay, but I face this problem because I'm brown and gay. And that's really important. So not only is Pride a space to celebrate, to remember our history, but it's also a space which allows people to kind of understand what it means to us as people and why it's important for an organisation. Because let's face it, an organisation understanding kind of the business element, the moral element, as well as kind of the financial element of why this is important to them, is just as important as kind of going, we're human, we care about you because we know you're hurting. And so being able to demonstrate that in just a space of joy is really important.
And I think for me, just picking up on the point that Sharifa made about connecting with history, I think is probably increasingly important. I've recently joined the civil service, and it's the first employer I've ever had that's been large enough to have an LGBT network, never mind a bisexual network, which I'm able to be part of. And I am absolutely ancient in our department. I mean, everyone else working there looks about 14. And it was quite interesting chatting with some of them when It's a Sin was out. And what was fascinating was that age group like binged it. They just loved it because it all came out on iPlayer at the same time, right? So they kind of just sat down and just like watched the entire lot in one night. And then those of us who were kind of, mid-40s upwards were sort of saying, no, it's too much. I could just about cope with an episode a week because I'd need that time just to kind of decompress. And I've kind of been inadvertently taking on this role where I keep, my blog posts for the staff intranet. have largely been about, you know, queer history. So this week for Ida Hot Day, I was writing about Magnus Hirschfeld, and, you know, the idea that actually being gay isn't a mental illness wasn't something that the world only stumbled on in 1990 when the WHO declassified it. Actually, Hirschfeld was talking about this stuff at the end of the 19th century. And I've had so many queer young people as part of our network coming back and saying, I had no idea. You know, I had no idea about this. I had no idea about what the AIDS crisis was like in the 80s. I had no idea about, you know, Stonewall or whatever. And that kind of troubles me. I mean, I don't want to, you know, I don't want to sort of in any way be critical of them, because, you know, where the hell would you find this stuff out, right? It's not, by and large, it's not taught in mainstream kind of history syllabuses. But I kind of think when we lose that sense of those that went before, and who's, you know, even at my advanced years, there were still people that went before me that opened the way for, you know, my youth in Brighton to be a lot more open than it might otherwise have been. So it just sort of bothers me. And I think having the opportunity to connect Pride, I mean, yes, it's all great to get out in the park in the sunshine and, you know, listen to music and drink a bit too much. But there has to be, I think, something educational about Pride as well, and just bringing, you know, telling our stories as a community, and recognizing, you know, that we do stand on the shoulders of giants who went before. And I think it's important that we keep reminding ourselves of those heroes that have kind of paved the way.
Yeah, it's a fantastic point, Simon, and it's, whilst there's sometimes I feel positive about the assumptions of rights and existence that younger members of our community have, right? Absolutely unassailable to them, that, you know, whereas that, as I was growing up and coming out, it was always layered with internal and external doubt, right? And I think there is a surety. I'm part of a non-binary network through a group called Proud Science Alliance, which connects life science organizations. And there's about 10 of us who meet up once a month and have a chat and a bit of a moan. And as we're navigating with our different organizations, well, you know, how do you look at policy? How do you look at anything, you know, when there isn't a rule book yet, right? And language is constantly evolving, and every day is an education day, right? So, but there's two of us who are over 40, and everyone else is early 20s, which is incredible to see them so engaged, so erudite, right? Passionate, but just with a fearlessness that says, no, of course we should have this. This is absolutely right, you know, and a confidence in themselves. And through activism, and they are incredibly active. Through activism, if we bring in and layer with that education piece that Simon talked about, right, we can only enrich that and bring them further and raise them up more, knowing that those that they see, you know, of us that are older and a bit more settled, and they're kind of going, oh, you don't fight, you know, where's the fight? And we're like, well, no, we have fought, and we will keep fighting. It just might not be as visible. It helps them to understand and make that connection to what's gone before, right? That what's been fought for and won, and for those who wear the scars, right, for those times to get to that part, have laid that foundation. And it's amazing to see these kids, and that's why the connection back into Pride is so important. When I look at our board of trustees, over half of our board of trustees is under 30, and I think that's absolutely phenomenal. And incredibly representative. And I see the passion, and we'll see later on in the afternoon events run by Chris and by Katie, and they are who are going to carry Pride on for the next 10 years, you know, the next 20 years, and bring through the next generation after that. So yeah, the education piece is massive. I'm hugely inspired, and I'd love to see it reflected within our own Exeter Pride group as well.